Let's talk about intermittent fasting for beginners. Now, the thing about intermittent fasting is it is super simple. And because it is so simple, it is really easy to overcomplicate. And so a lot of times beginners come to intermittent fasting. I remember being in this position where I kind of just felt overwhelmed by the idea, like, how do I do it right? And so in this video, I'm just going to take you through the process of just when you're first getting started, when you're an absolute beginner, what should you do? Now, there's a Navy SEALs quote that I love that has become my mantra, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And one of the big temptations when you're first starting with intermittent fasting is you're going to want to go fast with it. You're going to want to lose a bunch of weight and really make your fasting window really, really long and try to do this really fast. But what generally happens is if you go that really aggressive route, it's going to seem really difficult. But there's a better way. In my opinion, it's much better to do it really slowly. I really believe that the reason why I've been able to both lose the weight and maintain the weight loss for years now is because I went so gradually with it, and it just became a lifestyle change as opposed to this drastic thing that I did to my life. So at bottom, all intermittent fasting is just, it's basically lengthening out this window of time where you just don't eat during the day. And to get started with it, all you really need to do is just set up a cutoff time and a start eating time. So in other words, at night, what is the latest you are going to allow yourself to eat? And then what is the earliest you're going to allow yourself to eat the next day? So for example, when I was first starting with this, I had a very easy boundary, which was I would stop eating by 10 p.m. and I wouldn't eat breakfast until 6 a.m. And that's like an 8-hour fasting window, which most purists are going to say that's not really a fasting window. But even that can be a challenge, like if you are used to, like I was, eating whenever I wanted, doing, like eating at midnight or waking up, in the middle of the night and eating. If you're used to doing that, it is difficult to say, I'm not going to eat past 10 and I'm not going to have my first food until at least 6 a.m. But the point is just to learn how to do that, to have a rule for yourself about when you eat and when you don't eat. So once you start getting into that groove where you're cutting off your eating by a certain time, and then you're opening up your window on purpose at that time you set in the morning, then you can start to push out your window a bit. So you're just pushing out your fasting window to make it a little bit longer. And you want to go gradually with this. Again, it's all about keeping this feeling really easy and very doable. And for me, it was easiest to push out breakfast a little later and a little later, as opposed to cutting off my evening eating earlier and earlier. But you can do either one or a combination of both. So, in the beginning, maybe you start out with you're not eating past 10 p.m. and you're not eating breakfast until at least 6 a.m. So you might want to then, once you can do that, push it out to say maybe 7 o'clock, or maybe that's too difficult and you maybe just need to do 6:30. The main thing is to just look to yourself and figure out what can you do. Everyone's different. Some people, yes, they can do intermittent fasting. They kind of just jump to a really long fasting window, and that's great for them. But I had to go really, really slowly with it. And it's okay. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just focus on what you're able to do. And a lot of people wonder, well, when will I start to lose weight on this? And most people tend to start to have results around like a 14-hour fast or a 16-hour fast. And it may take you a considerable amount of time to get to that point. But it's more important in the beginning to just get good at intermittent fasting and get good at really being consistent with your plan. Now, most beginners want to know, well, what do I eat? Like when it's actually time for me to eat during the eating window, what do I do? And my advice is, and this is what I did, I eat whatever I want. I eat whatever I want. I do not have special foods. I eat whatever my family's eating. I tend to eat higher carb. I eat, just regular food. I just eat whatever I like. On my menu most weeks, things like spaghetti, pizza, I'm a Southerner, so things like country fried steak might be on there. I love roasted chicken with roasted broccoli. But basically, there's nothing that's off limits for me. And I think that's the best way to do it because, you have to think about the very, very, very long term. What do you want to be eating for the rest of your life? What foods do you want to be able to eat in maintenance? Because the big trick is not losing weight. It's about keeping it off for the rest of your life. So really be honest with yourself and just allow yourself what foods you like. The big key that I found for myself was to just eat to satiation. So in other words, eat until I'm full, but not overly so. And that may sound really easy, but it was not easy for me. It was very difficult to get into the habit of stopping when I felt full. And so I would just say, when you're in the eating window, just work on, in the beginning, eating to satiation and stopping. Now, I don't count calories. I found for myself that if I focused on eating just the right amount of food, so in other words, stopping when I felt full, that as long as I did that and stuck with my eating windows and fasting windows, I was able to lose weight. I started losing weight on like a 14-10 and really found probably the best results at a 16-8 and beyond. Eventually, I got to 1 meal a day, but that was mainly because I just enjoyed that lifestyle. And again, intermittent fasting isn't magic. It's all about making it so that it's hard to eat too many calories during your day. Ultimately, what will pull the weight off your body is being in some sort of caloric deficit. And if you are eating too many calories in your eating window, you will gain weight. And if you're eating, just enough to stay in maintenance, you're going to maintain. You have to be in some sort of deficit in order to lose. And yes, you could even gain weight with intermittent fasting, doing a strict, even an 18-6, if you're eating too many calories during your eating window. So remember that calories do count. Doesn't mean that you have to count calories, but you do, need to be aware that if the scale's going up, it means you're eating too much. And I understand that's a difficult thing to accept. I was very much in that camp. I thought I'm not eating too much. Like if the scale was going up, I would think I'm eating the same amount that everybody else does. But what I found for myself was that really it is easy to eat too many calories. It really is. Like you don't realize how many like little snacks and, just having a little bit bigger portion here and there can really add up. And what intermittent fasting showed me was, I really was eating too much when I was just eating, whenever I wanted to, whatever I wanted to, and whatever proportions I wanted to. I really was eating a lot of calories, and intermittent fasting just made it so it was really difficult, basically impossible to eat that many calories. And then I started to say like, oh, there really is a connection there. Now, as you're going along and you're practicing intermittent fasting, so you're not eating during your fasting window and you're only eating during your eating window, and you're being very consistent with that, and you're focusing on during your eating window, trying not to overeat, you also need to be tracking your weight. The idea is you're trying to lose here. So if you are not tracking your weight, it's going to be impossible to know whether this window that you are at is working. In the beginning, though, you're probably not going to be losing any weight when you're just practicing with intermittent fasting, getting good at it. And, when you have a shorter fasting window, it's going to be really difficult to lose weight, more than likely, just because you haven't really changed what you're doing yet. So, just expect that it'll take a while for weight loss to start to show up. But ultimately, you should look for about a pound a week if you've got a lot of weight to lose. If you don't have very much weight to lose, a fraction of a pound a week is probably more of a realistic thing. And what I like to do is I like to track my 7-day average weight. So in other words, I'm weighing daily, but I'm averaging those numbers over the course of the week so that I can see the trend line. And after you have several weeks of watching your trend line, you should be able to see a definite progression downward. So let's say 6 weeks. If over 6 weeks, you see that you're kind of trending down, then it means that intermittent fasting is working. And if it's still staying on a straight line, it means that you're just eating too much in your eating window, which means you could either make your window a bit shorter, so lengthening out the fasting window, because it's harder to eat a lot of calories in a shorter amount of time. Certainly something that I would try before that, though, is to cut out snacking. So just focus on eating meals, like sitting down, eating the meal, and then getting up from the table, and then not eating again until you're ready for your next meal. A lot of times emotional eating kind of is disguised as snacking. Or you could just focus on portion sizes, eating a bit less. And I think what you'll find, if you go really slowly with intermittent fasting and you just kind of push your window out slowly and you still continue to eat all the foods you love, you're going to be a lot more likely to stick with this over the long run, because it's not going to feel difficult. That's the big thing. You don't want it to feel difficult. And look, intermittent fasting is not for everybody. So if you find that you hate intermittent fasting, go find some other way of losing weight. Everything works, really. Like, every plan out there works. It's just a matter of finding the one that you can stick with over time, because that's ultimately what happens. People just don't stick with the thing. So don't be frustrated, and don't think it's the end of the world. If intermittent fasting just isn't your cup of tea, it's okay. You can go find something else. So remember, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If it's good enough for the Navy SEALs, it's good enough for us too, right? So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.